Welcome to Real Reviews. This week's reviews are brought to you by thefilmgordon.com. Experience film through the eyes of a true film addict, me. I am Tim Gordon, editor-in-chief of thefilmgordon.com, and on this show, we discuss my views on upcoming films, and you can also read current or past reviews either at thefilmgordon.com or at Spreaker, SPREAKER.com. Film Gordon. Now, this week, we look at a film that I really am anticipating. Of course, it's Mario Puzo's The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which is a crime film produced and directed by Francis Ford Coppola from his screenplay written by Mario Puzo. The film stars, of course, Al Pacino, Diane Keaton, Talia Shire, Andy García, Eli Wallach, Joe Mantegna, Bridget Fonda, George Hamilton, and Sofia Coppola. Now, this is the third and final installment of the Godfather trilogy, a sequel to The Godfather from 1972 and The Godfather II from 1974. And this is his reimagining and his original vision for the 1990 Godfather 3. Now, of course, this film tells the story, concludes the story, I should say, of Michael Corleone, the patriarch of the Corleone family, who attempts to legitimize the criminal empire. And it also includes fictionalized accounts of two real-life events that occurred, the 1978 death of Pope John Paul I, and the Papal banking scandal from 1981 and 82, both linked to Michael Corleone's business affairs. Now, this is a film that if you watched my show or you know anything about me, that I hold the Godfather trilogy in like super high esteem. Back in 2003, I was invited by USA Today to join several other esteemed colleagues to write about the best picture winner in Oscar history for the 75th anniversary. And of course, three of us, including myself, picked The Godfather. So the fact that Francis Ford Coppola in 1990, we all know the history of in the story of the film, that Paramount wanted for years for Francis Ford Coppola to make a third film. Coppola went off and did films like Apocalypse Now, The Conversation, Cotton Club, and several other films. Around the late 80s, he ran into financial difficulty. The offer was still on the table. He accepted, but a couple of things happened that altered the history of this film. One, Paramount gave him a small window. I think he started shooting the film in March, and they wanted it for Christmas. So he didn't have enough time to really kind of flesh out the story the way he did the first two. And then secondly, and more importantly, there was some casting snafus. Robert Duvall, of course, wanted $1.5 million to come back and reprise his role as Tom Hagen. Paramount balked at that, so they replaced him with George Hamilton, or a character, you know, not necessarily replaced his character, but replaced his function, the consigliere, and had George Hamilton versus Robert Duvall. But the most importantly, Winona Ryder was cast to play Michael Corleone's daughter, and she came to Italy, got sick, dropped out of the film, and Francis Ford Coppola's daughter, Sofia Coppola, stepped in and replaced Ryder, and that detail we will address a little later on. Now, as it relates to the major changes of Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, he made two significant changes to the film. That he changed the opening of the film and he changed the closing of the film. The opening of the film, as it appears in this latest version, is closer to the opening of the original Godfather, where Don Corleone is in his office, played by Marlon Brando, and you know he's listening to a colleague who has come to see him because he is having issues. In this film, the film now opens, cuts out a lot of the stuff from the original, and it opens with the scene with Michael sitting in the papacy or in an office with a priest who at this time we figure out that he's negotiating an exchange of $500 million for controlling interest, I should say, in Immobiliare, which is like an international European conglomerate that is kind of Michael's way, if you watch the original, of trying to buy legitimacy to try to legitimize his Corleone family. But as we also figure out, that the more he tries to legitimize the family and he gets away from his mob past, he's dealing with even more crookedness and when he comes to the Catholic Church, which plays itself out over the course of this 2.5-hour tragedy. Now, the other side story, of course, is his brother Sonny's, I guess, lack of a better term, illegitimate or bastard son played, Vincent, played by Andy García, is rising up. And for some reason, you know, Michael has seen this kind of temperament and temper before with his brother Sonny. And he takes his young nephew under his wing in order to try to groom him, as we find out later on, to become the Don. So again, I'm not doing any spoiler alerts here. If you've never seen Godfather 3, the movie's only been out for 30 years. So I'm not, I feel free to really expound on the story. But for me, I think the biggest changes are the two things that I did not like when I saw the original back in 1990 had everything to do with the casting. I wasn't a big fan of George Hamilton because I was so locked in from the first two films with Robert Duvall as Tom Hagen. But I think what Coppola has done, in addition to changing the openings and the closing, is that he's actually extended some scenes, added some footage in order to kind of really flesh the story out, because the original vision is that he wanted it to be a 3-act film, and he wanted us to see the death of Michael Corleone, and of course Paramount wouldn't have it. So of course in the original, they shot this scene with Al Pacino with makeup. Of course, we all know at the end that came across a little comical. And I think the changes that he put in this version has kind of repaired that. Also, the Hamilton aspect of the film is fleshed out a little more. And to me, it doesn't bother me as much as it did 30 years ago. But the one thing that Francis Ford Coppola could not fix with this film, no matter how much editing he has to do, is that his daughter, Sofia Coppola, and of course is an accomplished film director, not a strong actor. And when you're putting her on set with the Al Pacinos and the Eli Wallachs and the Diane Keatons, Joe Mantegna's, the Andy Garcias, and so many others, heavyweight actors, the aspect that her arc in the story is so important to the story. It's the one kind of thorn that sticks out, that's in the side, that can never be repaired about this film. But I will say that the changes that Coppola has made to kind of realize his original vision have made the film a lot more emotional. And maybe it's just me being 30 years older watching this film and really understanding this Shakespearean tragedy that sort of plays out. The irony, as Francis Ford Coppola talked about, is that in the film, Mary has to take the bullet for Michael. In real life, with all of the criticism that Godfather 3 received back in 1990, his daughter had to take the criticism for her father, who cast her and put her in this position in the first place. But having said all that, outside of Sofia Coppola's, I guess for lack of a better term again, amateuristic acting in some key scenes in this film, I think that the emotional arc of Godfather, Mario Puzo's Godfather Coda, the death of Michael Corleone, really, really, really works well. And in watching it, even though I'd already seen the film countless times, it still got to me emotionally of seeing how this man's life played out, that despite everything he did in order to try to save his family, at the end of it, he lost himself and he lost things he loved along the way. So for those of you who are huge fans of The Godfather, or if you've never seen any of The Godfathers, if you've never seen any of The Godfathers, I would encourage you to watch Godfather 1 and 2 before you tackle Godfather Coda, Death of Michael Corleone. But I would give this film an A-. I mean, I was thinking about a B+, but I give it an A-. I really think that the film has been massively misunderstood for 3 decades. And despite the fact, as I said, he can't fix the most glaring flaw in the movie, the emotional impact is intensified in this film. And for that, I will forever be grateful. So that's my review of Mario Puzo's Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. Until next time, you guys make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Film Gordon, or as I said, you can read this review at thefilmgordon.com or at Spreaker, SPREAKE.com, Film Gordon. Until next time, you guys take care. Enjoy your holiday.